Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Talking Development. I am so excited to be here in Korea and recording this. And the last 2 days have been incredible. We have been here to celebrate 2 anniversaries. The first anniversary is 10-year celebration of our World Bank Group office here, and I'm in this office right now. And the second is a 60-year anniversary of Korea's 5-year economic plans. And that is a very significant anniversary as well, because what you will hear in this episode is the miracle of Korea's economic development experience. So I'm going to start and introduce my 2 guests today, Jason, the country manager of the office here, and Ji-san, who is the program manager of the very first program that we started here in Korea. But let me turn to Ji-san. Can you talk a little bit about why was this program important to be created, and how did it build on the experience of Korea? How did you get started, and how has it evolved over time?
So I think when the Korean government decided to fund the office, one of the visions that they had was that with massive experience that Korea has on various thematic topics, they wanted to share that with the world. And I think they were looking at the office to play a role in doing so. Our program started with that vision in mind. Our program funds a lot of different capacity building programs, knowledge sharing, online learning, different types of learning offerings for World Bank clients. And what they wanted to do was, through our program, not just share the global knowledge that's needed at the client level, but also to help bring in Korean experience, Korean cases, so that it gets disseminated and passed on to the clients, so that they could digest it and see what makes sense for their country and how they could use it for the development of their country as well. So that's, I think, the vision of why they funded our program to start with the office.
Very exciting. What we heard today, and I think this was pretty remarkable, is that 60 years ago, Korea had about 60% extreme poverty. This is very high. And as you mentioned, they have gone from being an IDA recipient to an IDA donor, IBRD borrower, paying off their IBRD loans and really focusing on sharing their experience. Can you talk a little bit about what is it in Korea's economic model that made it grow so fast that it was able to make this incredible journey in a relatively short period of time?
It is an incredible journey, because there was literally nothing here a little over 60 years ago after the Korean War, except for 21 million people. So from their people, they created the 10th largest economy in the world that we have in front of us today. And I think an amazing thing about Korea that we saw in the events of the past 2 days is we can talk to the policymakers, to the business people, to the academics that were there at the time. And what you hear from them is that even though we call this a miracle, it was actually a series of very practical decisions that were focused around macroeconomic stability, in Korea's case, focusing on exports as a source of development, a very strong focus on education and human capital, which I guess comes from starting with only people. So very disciplined decision-making. Korea had big changes in its political system in the past 60 years. It had changes in government, but all through that, this series of practical decisions were made that supported these policy objectives. I think the other thing we heard today and yesterday was Koreans are very open with us with their mistakes. So as they were making these decisions, when they saw something that didn't work, they changed. They would react to that and they would do something different. So I think that's the amazing story that we've heard in the past 2 days.
It's incredible. Ji-san, let me come back to you. Any examples you want to share of countries that have benefited from Korea's example?
So I want to share the recent offering that we had. So back in 2019, we did a blended learning program course on solid waste management, where we invited 6 different countries from all regions. And we had a really good feedback from the clients that what they saw and heard from Korean experts, the site visits, were very relevant to the challenges that they were struggling with. And, being in Korea, I think they really saw opportunities where it was not like other countries where it took 100, 200 years to build, but it's just within a generation or even within the last decades that this change happened. So I think they were able to extract a lot of lessons that were applicable in their countries and also gave them a vision that they could do it.
Jason, what do you think comes next in this program? What is the next big sort of development issue that Korea might get ready to share with the rest of the world?
For me, the things that really stand out in Korea are, there are two things that I'd nominate. One is an amazing process of urbanization that has happened in its development and a lot of problem solving that fits around that. So in transport, Jisun mentioned waste management, all the things that make a city tick. We talk about smart cities, and that's part of it. Technology is part of it, but it's also much more practical city management than that. And I think there's a lot of things we can learn from Korea around that would be relevant to other places where the World Bank works. The other amazing thing for me that stands out in Korea is, I guess I'd describe it as a sense of community, a sense of common purpose, which really comes through in everything that Koreans do. And you could see it really through COVID with things like the way people interacted with the health system and the level of trust in government to be a provider, an insurer of last resort, I guess, almost in those circumstances to look after the population. And I think it's hard to duplicate those cultural aspects in other countries, but I think you can learn about the institutions that Koreans have used to help turn this community purpose into policy action.
That's excellent. So, friends, I think this has been for me really a reaffirmation of how important it is that we work with clients of all kinds. And in the case of Korea, it's no longer a traditional client, it's really truly a partner. So since we started with the program that Jisun is in charge of, we now have programs on green growth, which of course is so relevant to so many countries. We have programs on innovation and digital, and we also have a program around financial services and the financial sector. And this is where so many of our clients around the world and so many of our programs around the world are deepening their impact. So I see so much relevance coming out of this engagement that we have here, which I think is very exciting. I also think, Jason, what you mentioned, which was 60 years ago, there was nothing here. And today it is a high-income country, 10th largest economy in the world, hugely competitive, having really also built it on a platform of innovation and technology. So when I think about some of our countries that are trying to leapfrog development, there's a lot to be learned here. And when I think about some of our countries that are going through conflict and need to reconstruct, there's a lot to learn here. We talk a lot about building back better, making sure we build for the future. I think also the work that we do in fragile and conflict-affected countries can learn a lot from Korea, based on Korea's journey over 6 decades.